Hi, and thank you for using iHerd for your properties. My name is Mitchell Harris and I'm the Creative Director for the iHerd Ag Suite project. Today I'll take you deeper into the Properties module and how to add mobs to your paddocks. If you haven't already grasped the basics of creating a property, paddock or yard, please take a look at the previous Properties video. In the last video, we created ourselves a property, paddock and yard. In this video, we're going to populate this paddock with mobs and take a look at the paddocks and yard screen in more detail. But let's have a look at how we navigate through the Properties module so we don't get lost. We're currently looking at the All Properties screen, which displays all properties. From this first level, we can navigate down 3 more levels: the property, the yard, and the paddock. Each screen has the same basic functions: an information card to view your property, yard or paddock information, a list of items within the property, yard or paddock, an add button to add things to the list, and 2 buttons that can be used to filter whatever you see in the list. We've worked hard to improve this navigation to make it less of a maze. And here's a little tip. Selecting properties in the menu will take you straight back to the All Properties level again. So let's start exploring. We looked at the All Properties and Properties screen in our last video. So let's look at the Yards and Paddocks screen now. In the Yard screen you can see any paddocks assigned to it, as well as any mobs in these paddocks. The Yard screen is also the only one of the 4 levels that is optional, because you don't have to have a yard to have a paddock. In the last video I showed you how to assign a paddock to a yard, but I'll show you in more detail. If we tap Edit, we can assign existing paddocks to the yard by tapping the Assign Paddock button and choosing your paddock. But you can also unassign paddocks by tapping the dash here and pressing Delete. Note that you can also edit the yard information here, or delete the yard by tapping the bin, providing you don't have any paddocks containing mobs in it. You can also assign the yard to a paddock from the paddock end. So I'll just save this. And if I tap on our paddock and edit, we can tap on the yard that we want to assign. Or we can tap unassigned if we want to unassign a yard. So I'll assign a yard here. Note that you can also edit the paddock information here and the pins, or delete the paddock providing you have no mobs in it. So I'll save this for now. Now the lists in the Yards and Paddocks screens are very similar. Both display mobs, but each is grouped by the other. So on the Yard screen, if I turn them both on, we can see that the mobs here are sorted by the paddock. And if we go into the paddock screen, we can see that they're here sorted by the yard. Now there is only 1 yard in here. A paddock can only have 1 yard associated with it. The 2 toggle buttons on these screens display a summary of the list. For instance, on the paddock screen we have the number of mobs and the assigned yard. On the yard screen we have the number of mobs and the number of paddocks. And these can be turned on and off to show the paddocks or mobs. These buttons work the same way in the Properties screen, grouping paddocks by yards. Now that we understand how yards and paddocks work, let's start adding some mobs to our paddocks. There are many ways of adding mobs, such as from the Movements module or the Tally module, but from paddocks we just tap the plus button. This takes us to the Add Mob screen. Let's say we have just bought a mob of 50 Brangus that we're putting into this paddock. We can enter the quantity here by tapping it and typing it in, or we can use our tally plus and minus buttons to tally it up. The type of movement would be purchase, or whichever one suits your situation. That adds the seller's name and email address and the waybill number down here. We tap on breed and select our breed. We could add a breed if we'd like, but we'll choose Brangus for now. We can add a group, but I'll leave that. And then we can add our seller's name, email address, and waybill number. And tap done on the keyboard or up the top. We can add some notes in there as well if we'd like. Click done there. And now if we tap done, we'll be taken to the movements module, where it's all set up for us. We could add a few more mobs here as well if we want. Watch the movements tutorial video for more details on how to use the movements module. I'll press the move to complete the transaction and continue. Now I'll navigate back to our paddock. Now we can see that we've got our new mobs in here. We have 100 head where we used to have 50. And finally, to move these mobs from here, we can either tap on them directly to send one to movements, or tap the multi-select button at the top here and select whichever mobs we want to move and tap move. And that brings us back into movements, where we can drag them to whichever place we need. Well, that's it for this tutorial. I hope this has given you some idea of how to navigate the properties module and add and move mobs into Paddocks. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us via the help system in the app or from our website at www.iherd.com.au.